Now, to talk more about this, we're joined by Director and Chief Economist at Econometrix Dr Azar Jammine. Dr Azar Jammine, good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, this is a meeting that comes at a time of ongoing uncertainty in the global economy, tariffs being imposed by the US and so forth. What are some of the most pressing expansion points which need to top the agenda as these leaders meet?
I think the most important one of all, which is not confined to South Africa by any means, but is obviously an integral part of what South Africa tries to aspire to, is increased infrastructural investment to enhance service delivery. And this applies to most countries in the world, including not only your emerging markets, but your developed economies as well. And the challenge there is where to find the money to embark upon these infrastructural projects. Obviously in our own home base, it's not only the money, it's the capacity and the skills to do so, and the need to avoid interjection of these attempts by criminal syndicates. That's particularly in South Africa, but not it's not a global issue necessarily. But for the world as a whole, we need more infrastructural investment. Part of it is also geared towards enhancing the battle against climate change. But again, the amounts involved are absolutely mind-boggling, enormous. We're talking about many trillions of dollars that need to be spent to prevent the world from actually falling upon itself through climate change.
Yeah. In fact, as you touch on that, we know that looking at the outcome of some of the previous meetings over the years, none have managed to produce a consensus accord. Delegates have failed to reach an agreement on climate financing, for one, and a range of other issues. How should South Africa be positioning itself in these discussions for the outcome to be beneficial? It's
a very tricky balancing act that South Africa will need to embark upon. One of the things we've seen is that the party that's now almost standing on its own in some of these issues at the United States, the top members of the US administration are not actually attending this this meeting. But more generally, you have got huge ideological divides between members of the G20, individual members. I've mentioned the US standing on its own, but even the West more generally does not see eye to eye with many Eastern countries on a lot of these issues. The most outstanding one that needs to be tackled is how to prevent inequality around the world from increasing further. The way in which institutions have been formed over the last 50 to 60 years around the world is contributing to a society in which ever fewer people are getting ever richer all the time, and the benefits thereof, although they may seem to surface in economic statistics as being favorable, more generally, there is a feeling of resentment amongst the majority of people around the world at the sight that of a small group of people just enriching themselves, seemingly at the expense of the majority of the people. And as I say, it's a very complex story. I could spend a lot of time explaining how this comes about. But it's linked to easy money. Ever since the world broke, it's linked to gold in 1971. It's the result of increased technological sophistication, and the fact that an increasing majority of the world doesn't know how to access in many cases the benefits of these technological advances. And also we've got a massive demographic changes taking place which complicate the issues. The world's population in developed economies is getting older and older, relatively speaking, whilst the majority of the young people are now coming from developing countries, and in particular Africa. And how you marry the two, these strains that are being put on the global financial system when you've got two such disparate trends going on is quite a challenge. And what it has led to is countries being obliged, governments being obliged to spend more and more on social development, and at the cost of rising public debt levels, which are now reaching unsustainable proportions, not only in the United States, not only in South Africa, but in many, many other countries.
In fact, as you mentioned the United States, I mean, you touched on this very briefly. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent skipping this week's meeting once again in South Africa at a time when America's announced a 30% tariff increase come August 1st, which is a blow to South Africa's economic growth. What do you make of the dynamics as we try and read between the lines?
Well, the motto of the new Trump administration is Make America Great Again. And the theory behind this is Make America Great Again, to hell with what happens with the rest of the world. Now, I, as an economist, know that that cannot work from a longer term point of view. But that is exactly one of the strains that is being encountered by the G20 at the moment, where countries should be working together to try and find solutions. The United States is increasingly isolating itself and driving many of the developing countries further towards other economic powerhouses such as China and India and the like. And this is not to anyone's benefit in the longer term. I just want to make one point clear. South Africans are panicking about this 30% tariff that is being threatened to be imposed on it by the United States. Let me say that there are many, many other countries who are experiencing similar threats from the United States. We are not alone. And so one should not think that we are being singled out and are being threatened with a loss of competitiveness purely as South Africans. If the EU is also being threatened with a 30% increase in tariffs, we need not lose our competitiveness vis-a-vis European countries. So it's not that as bleak as it sounds superficially. South Africans are taking it very much to heart, and possibly more than they need to do. We've got far more fundamental challenges in this country than worrying about our trade only with the United States.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening and weighing in on this discussion, wrapping up that conversation with Director and Chief Economist at Econometrix, Dr. Azar Jammine.